You're listening to The Pump Fake. With your host, Jared Bailey.
All right, everybody. Hello and welcome into this live edition of The Pump Fake. If you're watching on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you're listening as a podcast, leave a review. Night one in the NFL draft come and gone. We are mere hours away from night two. And a lot of big things obviously happened during night one, round one in the NFL draft. A lot of trades. And a lot of noteworthy picks that were, maybe surprises. So we'll dive into it today on a solo edition of the Pump Fake. And the thing that I wanted to start with is, I just did a radio spot in Toronto talking about the Travis Hunter deal. And I've had a lot of Jaguars fans really come at me today already because I say, that was kind of an overpay to get Travis Hunter. And I still feel that way, Nothing's changed since, last night in terms of the way I feel about it. It's just looking at what they gave up. You give up pick number 36 in the second round. You give up a fourth round pick, although they got one back, so it was basically a pick swap. But they give up a first round pick next year. And while we can all assume they won't be worrying about taking a quarterback next year, it felt like a big overpay for a guy in Travis Hunter who, while very fun, very talented, doesn't really specialize in one thing or the other. And plenty of people are going to go, he won the Heisman, yeah, sure, of course he did. And he's a very talented player. But, Tim Tebow won the Heisman too. Charlie Ward won the Heisman too. There's been plenty of Heisman winners that haven't really done much at the NFL level. And that's not to say that, I'm hoping Travis Hunter doesn't do much at the NFL level. Rather, I think many people vastly overrated what he's going to be at the NFL level. And I think the Jaguars did that as well. And, props to James Gladstone. I understand you wanted to take a big swing. Your first-time general manager. You wanted to make a big splash. I get that. I saw a lot of Browns fans who were angry at Andrew Berry for making this deal. Browns fans should be ecstatic looking at the return that they got for the number 2 overall pick. They get, obviously they got the number 5 pick, but now they have an additional second round pick within the first 10 picks of the second round this year. And they get an additional first round pick next year when they're going to be quarterback hunting. This is a really good trade for the Cleveland Browns. And next year, when they're all but certainly going to be looking for a quarterback in the first round, now they have a ton of ammunition to move up for a guy should they need to. In a case, it's going to a class that's probably going to have Arch Manning if he comes out, Drew Aller, Lenoris Sellers, plenty of guys that are projected to be big names come this time next year. This is Cleveland saying, if we can get an additional first round pick, of course we'll move down 3 spots and then get a guy to put between or put next to Myles Garrett. So I think more so the Browns won this trade far more than the Jaguars did, which is why I did the write-up for USA Today's Touchdown Wire talking about my thoughts on it. And for the Jaguars, I gave it a C. It's not horrible. But if Travis Hunter doesn't end up being good, or I don't even think good is the baseline. If he's not great, if he's not an all-pro caliber player, this is going to be looked at as a trade that was they overpaid. Right now, that's how I'm looking at it. And so Travis Hunter had better be damn good because they gave up a lot to get him. And it certainly feels like an overpay on the side of the Jaguars. And again, I know a lot of Jaguars fans have been mad at me all day for saying that, which kind of annoys me because I often go out of my way to point out how much I love Trevor Lawrence, how awesome he is. I like Brian Thomas a lot. Anytime I'm on Jacksonville radio, I'm talking about how great Trevor Lawrence is and how the rest of the team and the franchise has let him down. So I feel a little bit spited by Jaguars fans. But this is a situation where either Travis Hunter is going to be very good and James Gladstone ends up looking like a genius, or the Browns are going to end up looking very smart, especially if they find a franchise quarterback next year using the pick that the Jaguars gave to them. That's all I'm saying. I hope that Travis Hunter ends up being a very good player. I just have my doubts about that. The Jaguars aren't the only ones who made a questionable decision. The biggest questionable choice of the night goes to the team actually right here, if you're watching on YouTube, the Atlanta Falcons. What are you doing giving up your future first round pick to get to pick 26 to take James Pierce Jr.? Les Snead, Sean McVay must have gotten off the phone laughing hysterically, looking at what they received. Here, let's talk about let's look at the total haul for the Rams here. So the Atlanta Falcons sent a 2025 second round pick, a 7th round pick this year, and their first round pick next year in exchange for the 26th overall pick and a 3rd round pick from the Rams this year to get James Pierce Jr. And everybody, rightfully so, has been very critical of this. There's a lot of questions about James Pierce Jr. in terms of attitude and if he's going to be a guy that can succeed at the next level. And I'm surprised, and I saw Connor Orr talking about this on the Heed the Call podcast. Nobody vetoed this? Like Arthur Blank didn't step in and say, no, we're not doing that. And they took Jalen Walker, a linebacker from Georgia as well, which felt like, all right, that's a solid pick. Whatever, that's fine. You get a guy who can potentially be a star in the middle of your defense. Like, that's good. But then to get rid of your first round pick in 2026 for a very questionable edge rusher, that just felt like a ginormous overpay, a waste. It felt like malpractice from a team management standpoint. It did not make sense. Now for the Rams, they have an additional first round pick next year that they can use as ammunition to potentially get Matthew Stafford's replacement. So for teams like Cleveland and Los Angeles, who were willing to take one-sided, lopsided trades and have an eye for the future, these moves have greatly benefited them. And of course, we're not going to know, who the true victors are in these things until these guys step on the field. Maybe James Pierce Jr. ends up being the second coming of Reggie White. And I'll have egg on my face talking about this. But if I'm betting, I'm going to bet that doesn't happen. And so doing something like that, if you're Atlanta, and look, I hope Michael Penix is good, but let's say that you don't like Michael Penix after this year. Well, guess what? You don't have a first round pick next year to try to replace him. They have really put themselves in a corner here. And I'm very curious to see what this on-field product is going to look like in 2025. They're a fringe playoff team last year. Penix showed some promise, but I have a lot of questions about how they're going about assembling a roster right now and managing their draft picks. This is that was probably the worst decision of the night, perhaps next to the New York Giants, which oddly enough, You can't see it on my helmet wall because of the frame, but the New York Giants right above the Atlanta Falcons. So the New York Giants, they take Abdul Carter. Okay, very smart pick. Now you've got a front four that consists of Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, and Abdul Carter. They're going to get to the quarterback. Good job, gents. Job well done. And many people, myself included, in our final mocks projected that the Giants would trade back into the first round to try to get a quarterback, which they did. And they took Jaxson Dart out of Ole Miss, trading up with the Houston Texans to get the job done. And I got to say this, man. The next person I hear that says, oh, well, you know, Brian Dable helped turn around Josh Allen, and maybe he sees some Josh Allen and Jaxson Dart, I'm going to suggest that they get publicly tarred and feathered. There is precisely zero things that Jaxson Dart and Josh Allen have in common. Yeah, Allen was a raw prospect coming out, but the mobility aspect, the ginormous arm, were things that were clearly there to be molded. And in terms of Jaxson Dart, like they just aren't similar prospects. So I'm already tired of hearing, like I saw when Cam Ward got drafted, somebody's like, oh, you know, he's got a lot of Patrick Mahomes to his game. Stop. We got to stop with these asinine comps because it's just getting dumb and it's making fans dumber. So enough with comparing middling quarterback prospects to the current best quarterbacks in the NFL because it's dumb. And in terms of what the Giants did, I think that this might be the last first round pick for Brian Dable and Joe Schoen. And I know a lot of people gave them a lot of flack for not re-signing Saquon Barkley. That was the right thing to do. Organizationally, Saquon Barkley wasn't going to automatically make them a Super Bowl contender. He was there for many years before. The previous regime is more at fault for everything Saquon Barkley related than Brian Dable and Joe Schoen. A bad team isn't going to be taken over the hump by a running back. They were right to not re-sign him. What was wrong was paying Daniel Jones. And so now you're going to go from a quarterback that you highly overdrafted to then trading back into the first round to take a quarterback who was probably highly overdrafted. And none of that makes sense. And on top of that, you know, they had already signed Russell Wilson for this year, signed Jameis Winston to be the backup. So I guess you could paint it in the light of, well, you know, Jaxson Dart isn't going to have to play right away. There's not going to be a lot of pressure there. But in that case, if the Giants struggle, which I believe they will, and Dable and Shen are gone, then that's just a giant waste from their standpoint. Where, okay, if you wanted to trade back into the first round and get an impact player to help you win now and keep your job, then yeah, that makes sense. Or, you know, you could have just waited to do that. But why sign Russell Wilson if you were just going to draft Jaxson Dart? Why make any of these moves if the plan was to get a quarterback? Because there's no guarantee that you're going to be there next year. So this all just felt like a big waste, unless John Mara gave them some sort of assurances behind the scenes that they'll be back regardless in 2026, which I don't think is going to happen. Then maybe that's why you make these decisions and trade up and draft Jaxson Dart. But even so, man, like the pick itself feels like a waste. I don't know if I just don't think Jaxson Dart is going to be a good NFL quarterback. And now we, you know, continue to see the slide of Shedeur Sanders, who, you know, I don't think is going to be anything special, but probably better than Jaxson Dart. And all night, all we heard was, oh man, the Giants have done the most work on Shedeur Sanders. You know, they've, you know, paid the most attention to him. The fact that they didn't draft him, I think that also said a lot. And so there are a lot of questionable decisions made last night. The two biggest being the Giants trading up and drafting Jaxson Dart, and the Falcons trading away next year's first round pick to take edge rusher James Pierce Jr. And look, we're doing this live. If you're watching on YouTube live or watching on Twitter live, if you want to leave a comment on what your biggest question mark was, go ahead. Or if you're watching it after the fact and just want to leave a comment on what you thought of night one, by all means, go ahead and do so. Let's talk about the good, though. There was a lot of good. Let's start with, unfortunately, I mean, as a Steelers fan, I don't like it. The Baltimore Ravens. They get Georgia safety Malachi Starks in what was, just the most Ravens pick ever, where they just stayed put and had a really good safety fall to them. And now they have a safety tandem of Kyle Hamilton and Malachi Starks on the back end. Going to open up a lot more of what Kyle Hamilton can do now that he has a more reliable running mate. I would fully expect them to also just kind of double dip in the secondary and also get another cornerback opposite of Nate Wiggins at some point, considering that they don't have one right now. Still got Marlon Humphrey in the slot, but you need somebody else on the boundary. Love the pick for Baltimore. As a Steelers fan, I hate it. But this is going to be a defense that, the last, 11 weeks or so of the year, they were top in the NFL in EPA per play. They seem to figure some stuff out. And now you add Malachi Starks to that. That is going to be a very good unit, and one that I'm very irritated about as a Steelers fan. Speaking of the Steelers, they pass on Shedeur Sanders, as well as passing on Jaxson Dart. And they take Derek Harmon, the defensive tackle, out of Oregon. Pittsburgh couldn't stop the run, and their defense fell apart down the stretch last year, as has been kind of the trend in this playoff drought, where they haven't won a playoff game. And so they draft Derek Harmon to put alongside Keanu Benton, Cam Hayward, as well as TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and Nick Herbert coming off the edge. I know a lot of people were hoping it was going to be Shedeur Sanders. I on record plenty of times saying I wouldn't have minded if it was Shedeur. I would have, been optimistic about it. Don't know if I would have, been ecstatic about it, but I would have given it a chance. But the fact that it wasn't for Pittsburgh tells me the exact same thing I've been saying all offseason. They're gearing up to take a quarterback next year. They're going to have a ton of comp picks to take one next year, and that's what they're going to do. And it also tells me, which this isn't exactly news or anything, but they feel like Aaron Rodgers is going to sign with them. Hopefully we find out about that sooner than later. I mean, we've been waiting almost 2 months for that. But the Steelers passing on Shedeur Sanders just puts an exclamation point on the thought that, all right, they're going to, in 2026, the draft is in Pittsburgh. They're going to take a guy there in a loaded quarterback class. Back to the questionable side of things. The Buccaneers taking Emeka Egbuka. I didn't understand that. I think Egbuka is a good player, and I would have loved to see him go somewhere else, considering the fact that they had a ton of defensive needs. And then right after that, the Broncos selected Jahdae Barron. That would have been a perfect pick for Tampa Bay. If you would have swapped the picks of Barron and Egbuka, if you would have swapped their teams, made perfect sense. Because Denver needs another receiver. Cortland Sutton's on the last year of his deal. And outside of that, they don't really have many weapons. So taking Egbuka there would have made perfect sense for the Broncos, and taking Barron would have made sense for Tampa Bay because they need help in the secondary. They need their defense to be upgraded. So I was incredibly shocked to see them take a receiver when they have Mike Evans. They brought back Chris Godwin. They drafted Jalen McMillan last year out of Washington. They have Trey Palmer on the roster. They already had a good core of receivers. So this felt like, I don't want to say a waste because Egbuka's a good player, but it just felt unnecessary. So I didn't get that at all. Again, if you would have swapped the players for the Buccaneers and Broncos, that would have made more sense than what Tampa Bay did. I do think that the pick of Barron is good for Denver. They get another really good player to put in the secondary next to Patrick Surtain, so that's good. But for Tampa Bay, that did not make a lot of sense to me. The Bills get the fastest player in the NFL draft, which I'm sure was music to a lot of Bills fans' ears. Max Harrison, the cornerback out of Kentucky who ran the fastest 40-yard dash at the combine this year. The Bills lacked speed in the secondary last year, where Russell Douglas was a trusted veteran. He wasn't fast. DeMar Hamlin isn't fast. Taylor Rapp is not fast. So putting the speed and the length of Hairston opposite of Christian Benford, who they just extended. That's a great pick by them. I know a lot of people would have preferred to see them go Trey Amos. That would have been a good pick as well. But in 2023, Hairston led the SEC with 5 interceptions. Didn't have as many last year, but still proved to be a really good player, and is now on the opposite side of Christian Benford. They obviously hope it goes better than the last time they took a cornerback in the first round when they took Kyer Elam, who they have since traded to the Dallas Cowboys after a miserable performance from him in the AFC title game this past year. So I like the pick from Buffalo there. I gave it a solid B+, which I think was kind of the consensus. Matt Perino, my buddy over at Syracuse.com, gave it an A. I think a lot of other people were hovering around that B+ range. So good pick by Buffalo, and now they get some speed on the outside to deal with guys like Xavier Worthy when they inevitably face the Chiefs again. And maybe that'll be their missing ingredient defensively. Time will tell. Who else did something funky? Was there any other, crazy things that happened in the first round? I should have it pulled up in front of me, but I think for the most part, there was stuff to like between the bad that we already talked about with the Giants and the Falcons, and the questionable decision by the Jaguars. And I think for as we go into round 2, we're going to see Schnur come off the board pretty quickly. I think we'll see Jalen Milroe come off the board pretty quickly. But I'm very curious to see where all these remaining receivers go. Still got Kyle Williams on the board. Still got Luther Burden on the board. I was surprised at what Kansas City did. I thought Luther Burden or even Jaden Higgins would have made a lot of sense with that pick. Obviously my buddy Matt Verderam, who's on this show a lot from Sports Illustrated, did not think they would go with a offensive tackle in the first round. And lo and behold, they take Josh Simmons from Ohio State. That surprised me, just considering what his thoughts were. He's pretty connected with that team. And the fact that they go with an offensive tackle, that surprised me a lot. So with Kansas City, I wonder if they're going to try to move up if they see a receiver that they like begin to slide, because they have pick 63 and they also have pick 66. So they got a couple picks there pretty close to one another that they could maybe use to get up in the second round should they want to maybe take one of these receivers. Like I said, Kyle Williams is a guy to watch for. Jack Besh from TCU, Jaden Higgins, Luther Burden, all of these guys that are still available could be taken by Kansas City because they do need help at the position. And taking Josh Simmons, he's a guy who's coming off an injury as well. So it's something that I did not expect to happen. Again, just considering what Matt Verderam had talked about when he was on the show. Ashton Genty to the Las Vegas Raiders. We're at an interesting spot with running backs because I've said this plenty of time. I've written about it a few times. And I was just asked about, a running back resurgence. I don't think running backs were ever not important. I think that for good teams, running backs are important. I think for bad teams, they make no difference whatsoever. Because look at the previous history that we have to back that up. Saquon Barkley goes to the Giants. The Giants stink with the exception of 1 year. He goes to the Philadelphia Eagles, and all of a sudden the Eagles win the Super Bowl. When you put a great running back on an already good team as the final piece, running backs are maybe the most important piece for that good team. We saw it with Christian McCaffrey in San Francisco as well. The 49ers had already gone to a Super Bowl, were already a great team. Then they add Christian McCaffrey, and they get back to the Super Bowl. The Green Bay Packers added Josh Jacobs, were a very good run team this past year and got to the playoffs. The running backs, it's not that they aren't good, it's that they're a victim of bad team building and being taken too early by bad teams who have far bigger needs that a running back can't fix. And for Las Vegas, this doesn't make them a Super Bowl team, but they had already gotten a better head coach in Pete Carroll. They had already gotten a good starting quarterback in Geno Smith. They had paid Max Crosby. So They had already had a bunch of other pieces in place that they had taken care of before bringing in the running back. So for this, like, I'm not going to crush this at all. I think this is a good pick for them offensively. They need to get another receiver. That's another team that I'm watching at the beginning of the second round to see if they go receiver, because they need it. Outside of Jacoby Myers, who, frankly speaking, is, a good number 2, not a number 1. So I would expect the Raiders to find a way to get another receiver. Hey, maybe that's the team. If there is a George Pickens trade quietly, that could make sense. So maybe keep an eye on the Las Vegas Raiders as a team who might be interested in George Pickens. Because again, Diana Rossini, a couple of days after Jordan Schultz of Fox Sports reported it, Diana Rossini of The Athletic about an hour ago reporting that the Steelers are still taking calls on George Pickens. And so perhaps we see a trade involving Pickens before the end of the day. If we don't see it by the end of the day, I'd be surprised if we saw it through the rest of the offseason. I know a few days ago I said that even if it doesn't happen during draft weekend, it could still happen. I think I'm going to take that back and say if they don't trade him during this weekend, they probably don't trade him at all. And then just let him become a free agent next year and get a comp pick for him. But not going to rule out the possibility of Pittsburgh trading George Pickens. I think that there's a lot of teams that would give them something for him. Dallas is a team to watch when it comes to that. Houston, Green Bay, Vegas. I think we could all see something happen there with those teams. But yeah, looking at the rest of the draft, the Bears taking Colston Loveland was a surprise. I thought that Tyler Warren was a shoo-in to be the first guy off the board at tight end. I think schematically, Ben Johnson thinks that Colston Loveland is going to be his Sam Laporta. So he felt like that was a better scheme fit. So he took Loveland. That's, whatever. That's fine. I think that everybody and their mother mocked Tyler Warren to the Colts, and that happened. Oh, yeah, let's talk about the Chargers real quick. I don't know what the Chargers are doing. You signed Najee Harris. Fine starting running back. You had an opportunity to get another wide receiver for Justin Herbert, who right now is throwing to the starting lineup of the 1958 Boston Celtics. And instead you take another running back. And this is why I don't take the Chargers seriously. I think that Jim Harbaugh plays a style of football that can work at Michigan. It's not going to work at the NFL level in terms of winning games that matter. They very well could get back to the playoffs as a wild card team before they lose to a better team. Running the ball 50 times a game isn't what the NFL is in 2025. You got to have some semblance of a dangerous passing game, which right now they do not have. You got Ladd McConkey. You've got 90-year-old Mike Williams. Quentin Johnston. And I got to tell you, I don't know another receiver on their roster after that. Darius Davis. Sorry. I think they have the other TCU guy as well. They do not have anybody that scares you as a deep threat, which, by the way, Justin Herbert, pretty good at throwing the deep ball. He showed that multiple years. And they have nobody who is capable of scaring you deep. That's another team I would watch for George Pickens. Because you need somebody who can take the top off a defense. And right now, they don't have that, which is hindering Justin Herbert. And I know a lot of people are going to continue to be weird about Justin Herbert because of how he played against Houston. He had 4 interceptions. I'll say, though, 2 of those weren't really his fault. They were off dropped passes that went right into the hands of defensive backs. Not to say that he played well, but Justin Herbert's still one of the better quarterbacks in this league and has constantly been put in positions where he can't succeed. Jim Harbaugh, good head coach, but stuck in the past. And now they're going to do the thing where the Greg Roman offense, they'll run the ball a lot, but that thing gets stale very quickly. The only difference is that in previous years, Greg Roman had the built-in advantage of having Colin Kaepernick and Lamar Jackson who could run around and make plays with their legs and kind of mask his shortcomings. Justin Herbert isn't going to run around like Lamar Jackson and Colin Kaepernick. And so this made no sense to me whatsoever. It's a waste of a pick. No offense to Omari and Hampton. It just doesn't make sense. You needed to get Justin Herbert some receivers. Last year, you could have got a Malik Neighbors. Instead, you took Joe Walt. Joe Walt, fine offensive tackle. You could have taken a tackle later and had Malik Neighbors. And it's just this old style of thinking that I just can't get behind. I know everybody's going to say, I mean, you got to win in the trenches. Yeah, you do. But you also need dudes who can go get you a bucket. And the Chargers don't have that right now. They've got the underneath game taken care of with Ladd McConkey. They don't have anybody who scares you over the top. And when you don't have anybody that scares you over the top, you can really condense the field and take away what the Chargers do. And so not taking a receiver there when there were plenty on the board, when Matthew Golden goes next, who not only is he a good underneath receiver, but he's a good deep threat as well. That's what boggles my mind when it comes to the Chargers. It made absolutely no sense whatsoever, and I think they're going to live to regret it. And I feel bad for Justin Herbert because he deserves better, and he deserves to be put in an offense with a team that is built around his strengths and what he does best. So the Chargers get a big, fat, bad grade from me. That's a D. Oh, I hated it. Was not good. It just made no sense whatsoever. There are a few comments here, so we'll get Michael Wade tuning in. Browns are banking on the fact that Travis Hunter is not specialized to hurt the Jags and have a good spot next year. Michael adds that basically premium value of 2 first-round picks, 10 out of 10. Yeah, and with Cleveland, you already touched on it a little bit. They are going to be quarterback hunting next year. And now they have 2 first-round picks in their back pocket that will certainly help them move up if they see a guy that they really like. And that's, it's something really good to have and a really big advantage to have. Richard says, the Chargers like players without character issues. I may be wrong, but I hear Golden has issues. I haven't heard anything about Matthew Golden character issues. I'm also not going to pretend to be, a college football insider or anything like that. I think with the Chargers, even if it wasn't Matthew Golden, right? Like there's plenty of guys like Elic Ayamanor. He would fit the Chargers extremely well because not only is he a good receiver, but he blocks his ass off. And so even if you took Elic Ayamanor there, that's great because you got a guy who is good at getting off press coverage, has a good release, can win at all 3 levels, but is also going to help you in the run game where he can block his butt off. And he's going to help you in that aspect as well. So it didn't necessarily only have to be Matthew Golden. And some may have seen Ayamanor as a bit of a reach. And who knows, maybe by the end of the night, they still get him and I'll tip my cap to him for it. But right now, man, I have a lot of questions about what the Chargers are doing. And when it comes to Justin Herbert, he gets the lion's share of the criticism, but more of that criticism should go on how the Chargers have built their team and have consistently given him not a lot to work with, whether it be with offensive coordinators, whether it be with lack of weapons like he's had the past couple years. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I think that right now he's kind of getting, I don't want to say Matthew Staffordized because he's in a better situation than Stafford was in Detroit, but man alive, he needs winners to throw the ball to. He needs guys that can get over the top and win over the top to make plays, which he's very good at doing when it comes to making those deep ball throws. So didn't make sense to me. Again, if they get, a guy like Ayamanor in the second round, then good for him. I'll give them credit for it. But right now, they have this move warrants criticism. And again, if you want to be part of the conversation, by all means, leave a comment live on the Pump Fake here. And again, if you're listening to this after the fact as a podcast, please be sure to leave a review. If you're watching on YouTube and you're not already subscribed, what are you doing? Make sure to do that, not only for the Pump Fake, but also a bunch of other fun stuff that's coming. Bringing back the Top 10 show, bringing back Watch the Tape. Going to try to get a few players on to watch some tape with me, by the way, so that'll be a lot of fun. So yeah, subscribe. And if you're a Steelers fan, I do a Steelers show on the channel as well, so be sure to subscribe for all the NFL content that your little hearts can desire. And if you need another reason to subscribe, Million Podcasts named the Pump Fake one of the 80 best sports podcasts going right now, which is very nice of them. So yeah, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate it. It would make my little heart grow 3 sizes too big. So, yes, night 2 of the draft coming tonight. Jalen Milroe, Shador Sanders, the most notable quarterback still on the board. Looking forward to seeing what that brings. And again, a few more minutes that will stay on here. If you want to be part of the conversation, leave a comment. And look, even if you're watching it after the fact, I scroll through the YouTube comments like every other person with the channel. Leave a comment below and maybe I'll reply to you. Let me know what you think about what your team did, how you're feeling going into night 2, or even if it's after night 2, let me know how you feel in the comments below. We'll also be back tomorrow to talk about what happened after night 2. And once the draft is all complete, my good buddy JP Acosta will be with me to recap the draft as a whole and give our winners and losers. So a lot coming in terms of draft stuff. So be sure to subscribe. And I did want to give more credit to the Packers for drafting Matthew Golden, by the way, because I love the pick. That's a team who's had a bunch of, number 2 guys, number 3 guys. Now you get a legit number 1 guy to put with Jordan Love, and I think they are going to make beautiful music together in that offense. Wouldn't rule out another receiver for them, whether it be via trade or the draft, because they need a deep threat of their own. Not to say that Matthew Golden isn't that. I already said, he is a good deep target. But if you can get somebody else who can specialize in just being that deep threat, Christian Watson is, what they were hoping would be that deep threat. He's got a torn ACL that he sustained in week 18. So I would not rule out the Green Bay Packers trying to get a specialized deep threat to put opposite of Matthew Golden. And look, if they do that, then you've got, Matthew Golden, a potential deep threat, Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs. That's a good receiving core. And it's much better than the spot that they were in when they just had, 4 number 2 guys, Bo Melton, Malik Heath, Dontavian Wicks thrown in there. They had a very deep receiving core, but they didn't have like that legitimate leader of the pack. And I think with Golden, he's quickly going to become that. So I'm excited to see what they do going forward. But I really liked the Golden pick a lot. So in terms of night 2, again, that is coming up very soon. And if you want to be part of the conversation, leave a comment below. Let me know what you think about your team's night 1 pick and what you think they're going to do in rounds 2 and 3. And again, as a Steelers fan, if you guys watch the Black and Gold breakdown, I was very happy with the Derek Harmon pick. I think he's going to be a really good player. And a lot of people, Steelers fans, are a little bit upset that it wasn't Shedeur Sanders. I would have been optimistic about it, but I think that the smarter move was team building, getting the best rusher that you possibly can for when you take a quarterback next year in the first round. It's in Pittsburgh. They are almost certainly going to be moving up to get a guy, which I am quite excited for. Especially, you see the flag right there. I'm a Penn State guy, and if Drew Aller has a big year, I would love nothing more than for Drew Aller to be the Steelers quarterback. But that's a whole other conversation for another time. And I think that's probably a good place to wrap it, unless we get another quick couple comments in here. And like I said, if you're watching on YouTube and you're not already subscribed, please be sure to do that. We'll be back on the channel tomorrow, as well as in your podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, talking about day 2, the biggest winners and losers from day 2. And then once the entire draft is all wrapped up, me and JP Acosta next week will be talking about winners and losers, recapping the draft as a whole. So again, be sure to subscribe to the channel for all of that fun stuff and enjoy night 2 of the NFL draft. I hope that your team does everything that you want them to do, unless you're a Ravens fan. As a Steelers fan, it's never going to die, But I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Leave a comment. And if you are listening as a podcast, leave a review as well. Talk to you guys very soon on the Pump Fake. Be well and enjoy your night 2 of the NFL draft.